The genesis of M3ter is really, yes, it's going back quite a ways. So Griffin and I co-founded a business called GameSparks, which was a back-end as a service platform for games developers. Essentially, it offered things like player management and leaderboards and achievement systems for games. And so developers are typically building their games using technology like Unity or whatever. But there was no such thing as a kind of back-end platform that would allow them to build all of these core back-end features that were required. So that's what GameSparks did. Now, why it's relevant to this is that we ourselves deployed usage-based pricing. And we therefore struggled with nearly every aspect of it. It was hard to actually bill. It certainly wasn't easy to automate the billing. And you end up creating errors on your bills, which is not good for customer trust. And so, automation is key to reducing that error count. So it's kind of one of the things that M3ter tackles. So you couldn't forecast that business. So you couldn't really determine which customers were going to end up growing next year and how much revenue you were going to make from them next year. And so that business was bought by AWS. And when inside AWS, it was like, da-na, the penny dropped. We could see that AWS had all of this sorted. They're a total usage-based business. They have, 300-400 different products and services, all of which are sold on usage-based models. And they have like this kind of equivalent of a revenue operating system internally there, which first of all allows them to automate the billing and deliver error-free billing at scale across millions and millions of different SKUs. And so it was just watching that operation and learning from it. And the pennies dropped. And Griff and I understood, you know what? A lot of software is going to need this capability. And there's no chance the world has it because AWS have spent, billions of dollars on it. And so that was the genesis of the idea. We, along with several others inside of AWS, came out of AWS then and said, look, let's build an AWS enterprise grade solution to this problem and take it to the wider B2B software space at much more affordable rates than what they can build it for themselves.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about how you guys got started with M3ter. Before we do that, I just want to go back to what you talked about earlier and the trend towards usage-based pricing. I think you're absolutely right that companies like Amazon or AWS, it's been part of their DNA for years to provide usage-based stuff. Like, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit. I want to try and understand, like, if someone's listening to this and saying, well, maybe they're not saying, but they're thinking, I've got a SaaS product and, I can charge a customer, I don't know, let's say $100 a month, every month, whether they use my product or not. If I switch to a usage-based pricing model, is the value or the lifetime value of that customer suddenly going to tank because I'm charging them based on very little usage? And is that a downside for my business, and how is that going to affect revenue? So, number one, is that an objection you've come across? And two, what's the answer to that?
I mean, for sure. We're not zealots. Usage-based pricing may not be for absolutely everybody. And if you're the type of software business that has a very, very loyal customer base that is used to paying you an amount of money, whether or not they're using your service or not, and don't mind, I mean, likely the fees are cheap. So the subscription fee must be cheap so that it's falling below somebody's radar. But, within those businesses, there's so many things that are going on behind the scenes. And this is, of course, what we learned in our previous company. So firstly, usually what's happening is half of your customers are subsidizing the other half. That's not very fair. A competitor is bound to come in and offer a competitive offering to you on a pure usage model just to be disruptive. So at least prepare yourself for it. But look, if you're not confident that usage in your platform is going to continue to grow organically, with your customers, and you're essentially protected by the fact that they pay this monthly subscription fee, then I would say in those cases, it's not for you. Now, I think generally across software, where we are confident in our products and our ability to generate organic growth, usage-based models have been shown to increase the net dollar retention by as much as 10 to 30% across companies that are equivalent companies charging pure subscriptions. And so I think that's a big deal. And so particularly as also another growing trend in software that your listeners will be well used to is a tendency to head towards self-service and product-led growth. Usage-based pricing is a very, very good companion model for those situations because the barrier to try is very, very low. You know, I can get on and try and usually in usage-based models, it could be like some kind of free tiers and things like that too. So you can try everything for free. But just as soon as you start using, you're not having to commit immediately to that 500 a month, that 1,000 a month, that 10,000 a month, whatever it is. You're able to just pay as you go and grow organically. And that fits very well, as I said, with that kind of product-led growth. You know, I've made the point that usage-based pricing models are a great companion for companies that are deploying PLG strategies, product-led growth. But it turns out that many of our customers are, in fact, you know, enterprise sales-led. And I think a platform like M3ter brings some real advantages to companies that deploy these models. Typically, one expects in enterprise sales models for customers to be on quite a lot of varying different pricing. So although you have standard pricing by design, what happens is when the sales teams engage your enterprise customers, they end up doing quite a lot of custom deals and deviations. And that creates a lot of complexity for M3ter's customers because the finance team, in order to essentially build these customers, has to gather all of the various different deal information for each customer and merge it with the usage data for each of those customers. And that's something that M3ter automates really well for them. And usually the fact that they're agreeing different deals, often there are different structures and things like that. And so the requirement there is really to be able to deal with a lot of different variations of usage-based pricing. And so when you go down this journey to try and implement a solution for it, you find that there's a lot more complexity under the hood than you're maybe perhaps first considering. And so some of the incumbent providers that like, you know, take, for example, Stripe. Stripe would claim to be able to do metered billing. But when you look at the sophistication of what they're actually able to do, they won't be able to deal with anything like the kind of sophistication that I've just been laying out for you here. And that is really, you know, one of the reasons why our strategy is specifically, M3ter's strategy is specifically around partnering with these companies and enabling companies like Chargebee and Salesforce and NetSuite to cater for these complex pricing models and dealing with all the usage data that drives them.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, so you and Griffin, you know, had firsthand experience of usage-based pricing with GameSparks. You landed in AWS world where they do that all the time and do that very well. And then eventually the two of you decided you're going to take the leap and start M3ter. Did you feel by that point you had validated that idea or opportunity enough just from your experience and what you saw happening around you to be confident that you could start going and building a product? Or did you still decide, well, we're going to go out and talk to potential customers, validate this idea further or whatever? So what was the approach that you took?
Well, so first of all, we did have a high degree of confidence, and that was fueled primarily because within AWS, we were working with a large amount of companies that were building on top of it. And so you got, I guess, to spend time with a lot of different types of software companies that were doing that. And you got to effectively learn from them how they were thinking about pricing. So we could see that this trend was definitely coming. There were other things driving it, for example, with the rise of software talking to software as opposed to having a user on a keyboard, or even with just the rise of automation, where the job of the software is to reduce the amount of people. There were some really key tailwinds that were just very obvious that this was becoming a big thing. So our challenge in many ways was to nail the product, like build the right product. And it is here that we had to go back and do exactly as you suggested. We didn't assume that we were going to know it all, and we certainly didn't just want to guess. And we took some very different positions in our approach to this than some others that have entered this space.